They say you can't put a price on family, but for 8 months, I did. My name is Margaret Gonzalez, and every 30 days, I handed my own son a check for $1,200. Not for a mortgage, not for an investment, but for the privilege of being a ghost in his home. Have you ever sat at a crowded dinner table and realized you were the only one not invited to the conversation? I paid to be invisible. I paid to disappear. But today, I'm going to tell you the moment I decided to stop shrinking and how I finally found my way home. Thanks for staying until the end. If you felt this story, please like and subscribe and share your location in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled.
There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by family. It's not the loneliness of an empty house or a quiet room. It's the loneliness of sitting at a dinner table, hearing laughter, watching faces you love light up with joy, and realizing none of it includes you. It's the loneliness of being present, but invisible, of existing in a space where you're tolerated, not treasured. My name is Margaret Gonzalez. I'm 57 years old, a retired nurse, and for 8 months I paid $1,200 every single month to experience that feeling. To my own son, to live in his house, to exist in the margins of a life I helped create. This isn't a story about betrayal, though it might sound like one. It's not about cruelty, though there were cruel moments. It's about something quieter, something that happens so slowly you don't notice you're disappearing until you look in the mirror one day and realize you can't quite remember who you used to be. It's about how love can wear you down when it comes with conditions, how family can become a transaction, how you can lose yourself one small compromise at a time, one labeled yogurt container at a time, one please eat dinner earlier so we can have family time at a time. And it's about what happens when you finally stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you. People always ask me, Margaret, when did you know you had to leave? They expect me to tell them about some dramatic moment, some final straw, a screaming match, a slammed door, a line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. But that's not how it happened. It happened over coffee. On a Thursday morning in December when I poured 2 cups out of habit, one for me, one for a man who'd been dead for 3 years, and realized I'd been drinking my coffee wrong for 8 months. Not the coffee itself, the way I drank it. Quietly, apologetically, like I didn't deserve to take up space in my own son's kitchen. That's when I knew. Let me tell you how it started. Not with a fight, not with malice, but with an invitation that sounded like love and slowly, quietly, turned into something else entirely. Let me tell you about the world I had before I lost it, and how I found my way back. The house on Maple Street smelled like cinnamon every Sunday morning. Robert would make his famous French toast, always too much butter, always too much cinnamon sugar, always perfect. The kitchen window faced east, and the morning light would catch the steam from our coffee cups and turn it gold. We'd sit there in our pajamas, feet touching under the table, not saying much, not needing to. That silence was never empty. We bought that house in 1985, the year after Bradley was born. A modest 3-bedroom ranch with good bones and a backyard just big enough for a garden. The mortgage was $420 a month, which seemed like a fortune back then. I worked night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, 12-hour stretches in the ER, coming home with aching feet and stories Robert would listen to while making me tea at 3 in the morning. He worked construction then. Left the house before dawn, came home after dark, hands rough and clothes dusty. But he always kissed me when he walked through the door, always asked about my day, always made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the world. We weren't rich, we weren't fancy, but we were happy in a quiet, steady way that I didn't fully appreciate until it was gone. Robert planted a small herb garden in our backyard in 1992. Basil, rosemary, thyme, oregano. Every summer evening after dinner, I'd go out there with my scissors, cutting fresh herbs for whatever I was cooking. The smell would cling to my fingers for hours, sharp and green and alive. Robert used to pull me close and breathe in deeply. "You smell like an Italian restaurant," he'd say, grinning. I love it. That garden became my sanctuary, my place to think. When Bradley was going through his teenage rebellion phase and I didn't know how to reach him anymore, I'd sit out there in the dirt and pull weeds until my mind quieted. When Helen called crying about her first heartbreak, I held the phone with one hand and dead-headed roses with the other, letting the familiar motions calm me enough to say the right things. Robert would watch me from the kitchen window sometimes, this soft smile on his face like he knew exactly what I was doing out there. He never interrupted, just let me have that space. We had this routine. Every morning, 6 o'clock exactly, Robert would wake up first, start the coffee. I'd come down around 6:15, still in my nursing scrubs sometimes if I'd worked the night shift. He'd have my mug ready, the blue one with the chip on the rim from when Bradley dropped it as a toddler. Robert wanted to throw it out 100 times, said it wasn't safe to drink from a cracked cup, but I loved that mug. Some imperfections make things more yours, not less. 2 cups, his black, mine with cream and sugar. We'd sit in what Robert called companionable silence, a phrase he'd picked up from some book and loved to use, just existing together. That silence was full of 35 years of knowing each other, of finishing each other's sentences, of not needing to explain. I miss that silence more than almost anything. Bradley was a curious child, always following Robert around with a toy toolbox, asking 1,000 questions about how things worked. Dad, why does the sink make that sound? Dad, where does the water go? Dad, can you teach me how to fix things? Robert had infinite patience for those questions. He'd crouch down to Bradley's level, explain things in a way a 6-year-old could understand. "World always needs people who can fix what's broken, buddy," he'd say. I remember Bradley at 8 years old, standing in the kitchen doorway, watching me pack my nursing bag for a night shift. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." My heart had swelled so big I thought it might burst. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. What kind of helping do you want to do?" He thought about it seriously, his little face scrunched up in concentration. "I don't know yet, but I want to make people feel better, like you and Dad do." I held on to that memory for years, especially during the hard times. The teenage years when he stopped talking to us, the early 20s when he was finding himself and we were just obstacles. I'd remember that 8-year-old boy who wanted to help people, and I'd know he was still in there somewhere. Helen was different, independent from the start. She knew exactly what she wanted and went after it with a determination that sometimes scared me. When she announced at 16 that she was going to be a school principal someday, I believed her. And sure enough, by 32, she was running an elementary school across town. Both my children turned out successful, self-sufficient, everything Robert and I worked for. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Robert installed a porch swing in 1998, spent a whole Saturday on it, cursing under his breath when the chains wouldn't hang level. The swing creaked every time you sat down, this particular squeak that drove him crazy. He kept saying he'd oil it, kept forgetting, kept saying he'd do it next weekend. "Don't," I told him one evening when he finally remembered to buy the WD-40. "I like the sound." He looked at me like I was crazy. "You like the squeaking?" "I like knowing someone's there," I said. It's proof. He put the oil away and never mentioned it again. After that, sometimes I'd catch him sitting out there deliberately making it creak, just to see me smile. We kept Bradley's childhood bedroom exactly as he left it when he moved out at 23. Star Wars posters on the walls, Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, all faded now but still there. His old baseball trophies on the shelf. Sometimes I'd go in there to dust and remember the sound of his laughter echoing down the hallway, the sound of him and his friends playing video games until 2 in the morning, the sound of him practicing guitar badly but enthusiastically. Robert would find me in there sometimes, just standing in the doorway. He never asked what I was doing. He'd just put his hand on my shoulder and stand there with me, both of us remembering when our house was full of noise and chaos and teenage drama. "Those were good days," he'd say. "These are good days too," I'd answer. And I meant it. The cancer came fast and mean. Pancreatic. The doctor used words like aggressive and limited options and make the most of the time you have. 18 months, they said. Maybe less. Robert lasted exactly 18 months and 2 weeks. I don't want to tell you about the hospitals, the treatments that made him sick but didn't make him better, the way his body slowly betrayed him while his mind stayed sharp, forcing him to witness his own decline. The indignity of it all. This strong, capable man reduced to needing help with things he'd done himself for 60 years. Bradley and Helen were there. They took turns driving us to appointments, sitting in those awful waiting rooms that smell like disinfectant and despair and bad coffee. They held my hand when I couldn't hold Robert's because he was too weak, too sick, too far gone. But in the end, it was just me and him. A Tuesday morning in April. Tulips blooming in the garden. His garden. The ones he'd planted 10 years ago and faithfully tended every spring. They were bright yellow that year, obscenely cheerful against the gray of that morning. He could barely speak by then, but he squeezed my hand with what little strength he had left and whispered, "Promise me something, Margaret." "Anything," I said, and I meant it. "Don't let yourself disappear when I'm gone." His eyes were so clear, so focused. "You're still needed here. Promise me you won't forget that." I promised. I didn't know then how hard that promise would be to keep, how I'd break it slowly, unconsciously, one small compromise at a time. The funeral was beautiful. Helen organized everything, made sure Robert got the service he deserved. White lilies, his favorite hymns, all the stories about how he touched people's lives. The church was packed. Robert would have been embarrassed by all the attention, but proud too. After everyone left, after the casseroles stopped coming, after the sympathy cards stopped filling the mailbox, I was alone in that house on Maple Street for the first time in 35 years. The silence was different now. Not empty exactly, but hollow, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for Robert to come home and fill it again with his presence, with his terrible whistling while he made coffee, with his habit of leaving his shoes in the middle of the hallway, with his laughter at dumb jokes on TV. I tried to keep busy. Worked in the garden until my hands were raw. Fixed things around the house that didn't really need fixing. Helped neighbors with problems they could have solved themselves. Anything to avoid sitting still. To avoid the quiet. Every morning the coffee maker would click on at 6 o'clock. Habit. Programming. Robert had said it years ago and I never changed it. And every morning I'd pour 2 cups. His black. Mine with cream and sugar. I'd sit at that table alone and stare at his cup until the coffee got cold. Then I'd pour it down the sink and try to figure out how to fill another day. 6 months after the funeral, I still couldn't figure out how to drink coffee alone. That's when Bradley came over for Sunday dinner. I'd made pot roast. Robert's recipe, the one his mother taught him, the one he'd perfected over 40 years of Sunday dinners. Too much food for one person, but old habits die hard. I kept cooking for 2, freezing individual portions. Eating the same meal for a week straight because I couldn't bear to let it go to waste. Bradley arrived at noon, right on time. He'd always been punctual, even as a kid. Inherited that from Robert. "Hey, Ma." He kissed my cheek, headed straight for the kitchen. "Smells amazing in here." "Just pot roast," I said like it was nothing. Like I hadn't spent 3 hours making it perfect, hoping he'd notice, hoping he'd say it tasted just like his father used to make. He didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't say. We ate in the dining room. The table that used to seat 6 comfortably now felt cavernous with just the 2 of us. Bradley pushed food around his plate, that tell he'd had since childhood when something was on his mind. "Ma, you doing okay here by yourself?" I set down my fork carefully. "Managing fine, sweetheart." "Why?" "It's just—" He glanced around the dining room, at the empty chairs, the too quiet house. "It's a big place for one person, and you're out here alone." "I've been alone for 6 months, Bradley. I'm adjusting." "Are you, though?" He leaned forward, genuine concern in his eyes, the same brown eyes Robert had. "Helen said you don't answer the phone half the time. Mrs. Patterson next door said she barely sees you. I answer when I have something to say, and Mrs. Patterson needs to mind her own business. Ma," his voice softened, "we're worried about you. We, not me. We, meaning he and Bianca had discussed this, probably at length, probably after Helen called with her concerns. I could picture the whole conversation. "What if you came and stayed with us for a while?" Bradley said it casually, like it had just occurred to him, but I could see the rehearsal in it. "Just until you get back on your feet. We've got that spare room. I can move my office stuff down to the basement, and the twins would love having Grandma around more." The twins, Tommy and Jake, 8 years old and full of energy. I loved those boys fiercely. Every time I saw them, they reminded me of Bradley at that age. All curiosity and boundless enthusiasm. "I don't know, honey. You've got your own family, your own life. Your family, Ma." He reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "Come on. It'll be good for all of us. Bianca's been saying we should have you over more anyway." Bianca, Bradley's wife of 9 years. Nice enough woman when I first met her, Polite, soft-spoken, worked as a bank teller at First National. I remember when Bradley brought her home to meet us. She'd been so nervous, hands shaking when Robert shook her hand. "It's such an honor to meet you, Mr. Gonzalez. Bradley talks about you all the time." Robert had loved her immediately. "She's good people, Maggie," he'd said later. "Treats our boy right." And she did, as far as I could tell. They seemed happy. Built a life together in one of those new subdivisions 20 minutes away, all the houses looking the same, beige siding and black shutters and 2-car garages. Cookie cutter, Robert would have called it. But clean, comfortable. Looking at Bradley now, at the hope in his face, I thought about my empty house, the coffee I couldn't drink right, the silence that was starting to feel less like peace and more like suffocation. "Just for a while?" I asked. "Just until you're ready to be on your own again," he assured me. "No pressure, no timeline. We just want you to be okay, Ma." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that this was about love, about family, about genuine concern for my well-being. And maybe it was. In the beginning. Maybe Bradley really did just want to help his mother through a hard time. Maybe Bianca really did think having me around would be good for the twins. Maybe everyone's intentions were pure and honest and kind. But here's what I've learned about good intentions. They're like a foundation. They matter, they're necessary, but they're not enough. Because what you build on top of those intentions, that's what determines whether you end up with a home or a prison. Looking back now, I realize we were having two different conversations that day. Bradley was offering temporary help, a place to stay until I got my feet back under me. A transition period. I was hearing something else entirely. I was hearing come home to family. I was hearing we need you. I was hearing you don't have to be alone anymore. He was thinking about logistics, spare room, meals, companionship. I was thinking about being needed again, about having a purpose, about voices in the house and laughter at the dinner table and someone to say goodnight to. Neither of us said what we actually meant, and that's where it started. In that gap between what was offered and what I heard. In the space between his practical solution and my desperate hope. "Okay," I said finally. "Just for a little while." The relief on his face was immediate and obvious. He smiled, Robert's smile, and squeezed my hand again. "Great. This is great, Ma. We'll get the room ready. You can bring whatever you need. Make yourself at home." Make yourself at home. I held on to those words like a promise. The room Bradley gave me had been his home office. A small bedroom at the back of the house, facing the backyard fence instead of the street. He'd had to move his computer and filing cabinet down to the basement to make space for my bed and dresser. "Sorry about the desk marks on the carpet," he said, helping me carry in boxes. "And the walls are kind of bare. We can get some pictures up, make it more homey." "It's perfect," I said. And I meant it. The room had a window with decent light, a closet, a door I could close when I needed privacy. What else did I need? Bianca appeared in the doorway, the twins bouncing behind her. "Margaret, let me help you unpack." "Oh, you don't have to. I insist." She was already opening boxes, pulling out my clothes with efficient hands. "Boys, go play. Grandma's tired from the move." I wasn't tired. I wanted to see my grandsons. I'd been looking forward to spending more time with them, reading stories, helping with homework, being present in their lives in a way I couldn't when I lived across town. But Bianca was already shooing them away, organizing my closet according to some system I didn't understand. Color-coded. Seasonal. I watched her work and felt something small shift in my chest. Not quite discomfort. Not yet. Just awareness. This was her house, her system, her rules. I was the guest. The first few weeks were good. Better than good. I woke up to the sound of footsteps overhead instead of silence. Made coffee in a kitchen that smelled like other people's breakfast. Watched the twins get ready for school, all chaos and mismatched socks and last-minute homework. I tried to be helpful without getting in the way. Fixed a broken outlet in the garage. Old habits from watching Robert work. Weeded Bianca's flower beds. Organized the twins' toy closet while they were at school. "Oh, Margaret, you didn't have to do that," Bianca said when she got home from the bank. "But thank you." Always polite, always grateful. But I started noticing little things. The way she'd re-wipe the counter after I cleaned it. How she'd rearrange the dishes I put in the dishwasher. Small things. Probably nothing. Probably. A month in, Bradley brought it up over breakfast. Just the two of us. Bianca had already left for work, the twins for school. I was reading the morning paper, enjoying my second cup of coffee. "Ma, can we talk about something?" I looked up. He had that expression again, the one that meant he'd been rehearsing this conversation with Bianca. "Bianca and I were talking last night." He fidgeted with his wedding ring. "You've been here almost a month now, and we think, it would be fair if you contributed something to the household expenses." Fair. That word landed heavy. What kind of contribution are we talking about? I kept my voice level. "Nothing crazy. Just help with utilities, groceries, that kind of thing. You're using electricity, water, eating food. It's only fair." There was that word again. Fair. Like fairness had anything to do with family. Like I hadn't spent 23 years feeding and housing him without ever once tallying up the cost. But I didn't say that. Instead, I asked, "How much were you thinking?" "Maybe $800 a month? That would cover your share of everything." $800. I made $1,847 a month from Social Security and my nursing pension. After $800, I'd have barely enough left for my medications, car insurance, personal expenses. But what choice did I have? Go back to Maple Street? Back to that empty house and those 2 cups of coffee and that silence that felt like drowning? "Okay," I said. "That seems reasonable." The relief on his face was immediate. "Great. Thanks, Ma. I knew you'd understand." I understood perfectly. I understood that I'd just become a tenant in my son's house. I just didn't realize yet how expensive the real rent would be. The $800 was just the beginning. Over the next months, Margaret would discover that the real cost of staying wasn't measured in money. It was measured in small dignities, in tiny pieces of herself she'd give up one at a time. The labeled food, the restricted hours, the slow, steady erosion of her place in the family she'd helped create. And through it all, she'd keep paying, keep shrinking, keep disappearing, until one Tuesday in November, when she'd overhear a phone conversation that would finally show her the truth she'd been trying not to see. The $800 became $1,000 after 2 months. "Utilities went up," Bradley explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Water bill's been crazy high, and we're trying to pay down the mortgage faster." The $1,000 became $1,200 after another month. "Property taxes increased," Bianca said this time, catching me in the hallway outside my room. "I'm sure you understand, Margaret. Everything's getting more expensive." Each increase came with explanations that sounded reasonable on the surface. Logical. Fair. That word again. Always hovering in the air between us like something solid and inarguable. I handed over the checks and smiled. Kept my voice pleasant. Kept my complaints to myself. Because what was the alternative? By month 4, I'd developed a routine. Wake up at 5:30 before anyone else. Make my coffee quietly. Just 1 cup now. I'd finally broken that habit. Sit in my room until I heard Bradley leave for the garage, Bianca for the bank, the twins' school bus arriving. Then I'd emerge. Clean up the breakfast dishes they'd left in the sink. Wipe down counters. Start laundry. Try to be useful enough to justify the space I occupied. The rules started small. So small I almost didn't notice them appearing. "Margaret?" Bianca poked her head into the kitchen one evening while I was making myself a sandwich. "Could you maybe eat dinner a little earlier? We like to have family time during the twins' homework hour. Nothing personal." Family time, as if I wasn't family, but I nodded. Of course, that makes sense. After that, I ate at 5:30, alone in my room usually, a tray on my lap, watching the news on the small TV Bradley had moved in from the garage. The sounds of their family dinner would drift down the hallway, laughter, the twins talking about their day, Bianca's gentle corrections about table manners. I'd eat my meal and pretend not to hear. Then came the labeled food. I opened the refrigerator one morning to find sticky notes on everything. Bianca's yogurt, Bradley's beer, twins' juice boxes. Even the sandwich meat had a label. For school lunches only. Bianca found me staring at it, confused. Oh, I should have mentioned. Just helps keep track of what belongs to who. We were running out of things unexpectedly, and I thought this might help everyone stay organized. What she meant was, this is what you're allowed to touch. Everything else is off limits. I started buying my own groceries, keeping them in a separate section of the refrigerator, clearly marked with my name, my own bread, my own milk, my own yogurt that I wouldn't eat anyway because every time I opened that container, I saw all those other labels and felt like a stranger in someone else's house. Which I suppose I was. Helen visited on a Saturday in month 5. She'd been coming every other weekend, staying 2 or 3 days at a time. She had her own apartment in town, made good money as a school principal, but somehow she got to be the guest while I became the tenant. I tried to bring it up with Bradley once, carefully. "Son, Helen stays here pretty regular. Maybe she could chip in something too?" He'd looked at me like I'd suggested something absurd. "Helen's different, Ma. She's got her own place. She's just visiting." "I'm your mother." "I know that." His voice had an edge I wasn't used to hearing. "But you live here now. There's a difference." Was there? When did I stop being family and start being a boarder? Helen found me in the backyard that Saturday afternoon. I was pulling weeds from Bianca's flower beds, trying to be helpful, trying to earn my keep. She sat down on the grass beside me, not caring about the dirt. "Mom, you seem different lately," she said. "Quieter." I kept pulling weeds. "Just getting older, I guess." "That's not what I meant." She studied my face the way she used to study her students when she knew they weren't telling the whole truth. "Are you happy here?" Loaded question. Was I happy, or was I just less miserable than I'd been alone? "I'm grateful your brother took me in," I said carefully. "That's not what I asked." Before I could answer, Bianca called from the back door. "Margaret? Helen? Dinner's ready." Helen let it drop, but I caught her watching me during the meal, that concerned look she'd inherited from Robert, the look that said she saw more than I wanted her to see. The worst part was watching how they acted around the twins when I was there. Tommy would run up to hug me after school, backpack flying, ready to tell me about his day, and Bianca would immediately redirect him. "Tommy, Grandma's tired. Why don't you go wash up for snack time?" I wasn't tired. I was never tired when they wanted to talk to me. Jake would ask me to help with his homework, math problems I could actually explain in a way that made sense, and Bradley would intercept. "Grandma's busy, buddy. Let's figure it out together." I wasn't busy. I was sitting right there, available, willing. After the 3rd time, the 4th time, the 10th time, I stopped reaching out first, and they stopped running to me. That's how you teach children that someone isn't really part of the family. You don't say it out loud. You just create distance, redirect attention, establish patterns. And one day they stopped trying to cross the gap. I started spending more time in my room. It seemed easier than navigating the unspoken rules that kept changing. The room was small but comfortable enough. Bradley's old Star Wars posters still on the walls. Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back. Faded now, but still hanging on. Ironic that I'd ended up in my son's childhood bedroom, like some kind of reverse growing up. I'd lie on the bed and stare at those posters and think about 8-year-old Bradley standing in my kitchen doorway. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do. Where was that boy now? What happened to him?" Or maybe the better question was, what happened to me? When did I become so small, so quiet, so willing to accept whatever scraps of belonging they were willing to offer? Month 7 brought another rent increase. $1,200 handed over on the first Friday of the month like clockwork. Bradley had started calling it rent collection day, always in front of Bianca, always with witnesses, like I was any other tenant, like I hadn't changed his diapers, taught him to tie his shoes, paid for his trade school when college didn't work out, like I hadn't sat up with him when he had nightmares, cheered at his Little League games, held him when his first girlfriend broke his heart. But I'd hand over the check, smile, and go about my day. What else could I do? By month 8, I had it down to a science. Wake early, stay in my room until the house emptied, emerge to clean, do laundry, run errands, eat dinner alone at 5:30, retreat back to my room by 7 when the real family time began. Exist in the margins. Take up as little space as possible. Be grateful for the privilege of paying to feel invisible. I'd become a ghost in a house full of living people. And the worst part? I'd done it to myself. Every time I said okay to another rule, another increase, another boundary. Every time I swallowed my hurt instead of speaking up. Every time I chose keeping the peace over keeping my dignity. Robert's voice echoed in my head sometimes. "Don't let yourself disappear, Margaret." Too late, my love. Too late. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in November. One of those gray, cold days where the sun never really shows up and everything feels muted. Like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to shift. I was in the kitchen folding laundry, my clothes mixed in with theirs because we all shared the same washing machine, Bianca's expensive workout clothes that had to be air-dried, Bradley's work shirts that still smelled like motor oil no matter how many times you washed them, the twins' school uniforms, navy blue and wrinkled. I'd been living there 8 months by then. 8 months of walking on eggshells. 8 months of paying $1,200 a month to feel like an inconvenience. 8 months of watching my grandsons grow up from a distance, like looking at them through glass. I was folding one of Bradley's shirts, the blue flannel Robert had bought him for Christmas 3 years ago, when Bradley walked into the kitchen. He was on his cell phone, talking loud, pacing around the kitchen island like I wasn't even there, like I was invisible. "Yeah, he's still here," he said to whoever was on the other end. Then he laughed. Sorry. Yeah, she's still here. My hand stopped moving. The shirt I was holding suddenly felt heavy. "What can I do? She's got nowhere else to go." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating. At least she pays rent now, so it's not like she's totally freeloading. Freeloading. Like the $1,200 a month wasn't enough. Like the 30 years I spent working my ass off to give him opportunities meant nothing. Like the fact that I'd raised him and his sister, that I'd taught him how to be a decent human being, that I'd loved him unconditionally for 30 years. Like all of that counted for zero. Bradley turned his back to me, lowered his voice just slightly. But not enough. Never enough. "Bianca keeps saying we should look into one of those senior communities, but I don't have the heart to bring it up. Guy's been through enough, you know?" Senior communities. They were talking about shipping me off to some old folks' home while they kept my rent money and got their house back. Planning my life behind my back like I was already gone. "Between you and me, it's getting old." Bradley's voice dropped even lower, but I could still hear every word. "Can't have friends over without explaining why there's an old woman hanging around. Bianca's getting frustrated too. She says it feels like we're running a boarding house." A boarding house. That's what I was to them. Not family, not Margaret, the mother who'd given Bradley life and raised him and loved him. Just an old woman. A boarder. An inconvenience they discussed when they thought I couldn't hear. Something inside me didn't break. Not exactly. It clarified. Like water that's been murky suddenly going completely still. Like a photograph coming into focus after being blurry for months. I could see exactly what I was to them now. Not family. A problem they were managing. A source of income that they tolerated. An obstacle to the life they wanted to live. Bradley laughed at something the person on the phone said. The sound made my skin crawl. "Nah, she's fine. Keeps to herself mostly. Does the laundry and stuff, so that's helpful. But yeah, it'll be good when she's ready to get her own place again." When I was ready. Like this had been my choice. Like I'd imposed myself on their generous hospitality instead of accepting an invitation. Like I was the problem. I set down the shirt carefully, folded it with precision, creased the sleeves just right, placed it on the pile with all the other laundry I'd washed and dried and folded for free while paying $1,200 a month for the privilege. Then I walked to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in 8 months, I let myself see the truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't temporary. This was my life now, if I let it be. Paying rent to exist. Following rules that changed without warning. Being tolerated but not treasured. Loving people who saw me as overhead. I thought about Robert. About his last words. "Don't let yourself disappear." I disappeared anyway. Slowly. Quietly. One compromise at a time. One labeled yogurt container at a time. One family time without you at a time. But here's the thing about disappearing. It's a choice. Maybe not a conscious one. Maybe you don't even realize you're making it. But it's still a choice. And if you can choose to disappear, you can choose to come back. I didn't sleep that night. Lay in bed staring at Bradley's old Star Wars posters, listening to the sounds of their house settling around me. The furnace kicking on, pipes expanding. The distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Normal house sounds that should have been comforting but felt alien. Like I was listening to someone else's life through a wall. I thought about Margaret from before. The one who'd worked 28 years of night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital. Who'd raised 2 children while maintaining a marriage and a garden and a sense of self. Who'd sat with dying patients and held their hands and made them feel less alone. Where was she? When did I trade her for this smaller, quieter version? This woman who asked permission to use the kitchen, who ate dinner in her room, who paid $1,200 a month to feel like she didn't belong. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I realized something. I had money, more than they knew. Social Security, $947 a month. Nursing pension, $900 a month. That was the $1,847 they knew about. What they didn't know, Robert's life insurance payout. $150,000 sitting in an account I barely touched. Too scared to spend it. Too scared of what would happen when it ran out. Plus our savings. The account Robert and I had been building since 1985. 40 years of putting aside $50 here, $100 there. Small amounts that added up to something substantial over decades. I'd never told Bradley about any of it. Never told Helen. Kept it quiet out of some misguided fear that if they knew I had money, they'd see me as a target instead of a mother. But in trying not to be a burden, I'd made myself small, powerless, dependent, when I'd never been powerless at all. The thought sat with me like a stone, heavy, undeniable. I had choices. I'd always had choices. I just hadn't let myself see them. Thursday morning came quiet and cold. I got up at 5:30 like always, made coffee, just 1 cup now, sat at the kitchen table and watched the sunrise paint the walls gold through the window. The house was silent, peaceful almost. This was the only time of day it felt like mine anymore. I poured my coffee, added cream and sugar, brought it to my lips, and stopped, because something was different. Or maybe I was different. I couldn't quite name it yet, but I could feel it. A shift, a clarity. I set the cup down carefully. For 8 months I'd been drinking this coffee wrong. Not the coffee itself. Bianca bought the same brand I'd always used, but the way I drank it. Quickly, quietly, apologetically, like I didn't deserve to sit in this kitchen and take my time, like I was stealing something instead of inhabiting space I paid for. When was the last time I'd actually tasted my coffee? Really tasted it, instead of just consuming it as fast as possible so I could retreat back to my room before anyone woke up? I picked up the cup again, took a slow sip, let it sit on my tongue. It tasted like coffee. Just coffee. Not shame, not compromise, not the price of belonging. Just coffee. And something inside me, something that had been clenched tight for 8 months, finally loosened. I sat there in that kitchen and asked myself the questions I'd been too scared to ask. What am I doing? I'm 57 years old. I have a nursing pension, Social Security, Robert's life insurance, savings we accumulated over 40 years. I own a house, paid off, sitting empty on Maple Street. I'm not helpless. I'm not broke. I'm not incapable. So why am I paying $1,200 a month to feel invisible? Why am I asking permission to use the kitchen I helped pay for? Why am I eating dinner in my room so they can have family time without me? Why am I folding their laundry, cleaning their house, loving their children, and still feeling like I'm not doing enough? When did I stop being a mother and become a transaction? When did my son stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as overhead? The questions kept coming, each one sharper than the last. Why am I accepting labels on food like I'm a child who can't be trusted? Why am I grateful for scraps of attention from my own grandchildren? Why am I making myself smaller and smaller, hoping that if I just take up a little less space, need a little less, ask for a little less, they'll finally see me as worth keeping? And the worst question, the one that made my hands shake around that coffee cup. What would Robert say if he saw me like this? I knew the answer immediately. He'd be heartbroken. Not at Bradley, not at Bianca, at me, for breaking the only promise he ever asked me to keep. Don't let yourself disappear, Margaret. I disappeared so completely, I'd forgotten I ever existed. The decision didn't feel like a decision. It felt like waking up, like surfacing from underwater and taking that first gasping breath. I didn't make the choice. The choice made itself. It was so obvious. I almost laughed. I had money. I had options. I had a whole life I'd been too scared to live because I was afraid of being alone. But I was already alone, surrounded by family, paying rent to exist, and completely, utterly alone. So what was I protecting myself from? What was I so afraid of? The silence of an empty house? I was already living in silence. The loneliness? I was already lonely. Being a burden? I was already convinced I was a burden. That's why I kept paying more, doing more, being less. What if the thing I was most afraid of was actually the thing I needed most? To be alone, but on my own terms, in my own space, drinking my coffee at my own pace without apologizing for existing. I looked at the clock. 6 o'clock exactly. I picked up my phone and called Dorothy Martinez. Dorothy had been our real estate agent 20 years ago when Robert and I bought the house on Maple Street. A sharp woman in her 60s, always impeccably dressed, with a laugh that could fill a room. She answered on the third ring. Dorothy Martinez speaking. Dorothy, it's Margaret Gonzalez. A pause, then warmth flooded her voice. Margaret! Oh, honey, how are you? I heard about Robert. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to the funeral. I was out of state with my daughter. How are you holding up? I stopped, thought about the real answer. I'm ready for a change. Oh? I need to buy a house, Dorothy. Something small, quiet, mine. Can you help me with that? Another pause. I could almost hear her shifting into professional mode, but the warmth stayed in her voice. Of course I can help you. What's your timeline? Fast as possible. Okay, I heard papers rustling. Let me pull up some listings. What are you looking for? How many bedrooms? What's your budget? 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a little yard for a garden, quiet neighborhood. And Dorothy? Yes? I'm paying cash. The rustling stopped. Cash? Margaret, are you sure? You don't want to keep some liquidity? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. 2 days later, I was standing in a small villa about 20 minutes from the coast. It wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. Kitchen that had been updated sometime in the last decade. White cabinets, granite countertops, nothing special but clean and functional. Hardwood floors throughout. A living room with a bay window that overlooked the street. And a backyard. Small but big enough for a garden. Big enough for herbs. Basil, rosemary, thyme. Dorothy walked me through each room, pointing out features. New water heater. Roof replaced 5 years ago. Good bones, solid foundation. But I wasn't listening to any of that. I was listening to the quiet. It wasn't the hollow silence of Maple Street after Robert died. It wasn't the tense silence of Bradley's house where I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was just quiet, peaceful, full of possibility. We stepped out onto the back porch. Someone had installed a swing, simple wooden, hanging from chains that looked sturdy and new. Previous owner was a widower, Dorothy mentioned, consulting her notes. 78 years old, kept the place immaculate. His daughter said he spent every morning on that porch swing, reading the paper and watching the world wake up. I sat down on the swing. It creaked slightly under my weight. I didn't want to oil it. He moved to assisted living last month, Dorothy continued, but he loved this house. Lived here 15 years. Raised his garden, knew all the neighbors. I looked out at the small backyard, imagined it in spring, flowers blooming, herbs growing, me sitting on this swing with my coffee, watching the sunrise without apologizing for existing. How much? I asked. Dorothy checked her papers. He's asking $127,000. It's been on the market 3 weeks, so there might be some room to negotiate. I'll take it. She looked up, surprised. Don't you want to see a few other places? Compare options? I'll take it, I repeated. Full asking price. Cash. Margaret. Dorothy sat down on the swing beside me. Honey, are you sure? This is a big decision. Maybe you should think about it for a few days. I've been thinking about it for 8 months, I said quietly. I'm done thinking. I'm ready to live. Dorothy studied my face. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. Okay then, let's make this happen. We closed the deal in 6 days. Fastest real estate transaction Dorothy said she'd ever handled. Cash deals move quick. No mortgage applications, no bank approvals, no waiting. Just paperwork and signatures and wire transfers. I didn't tell anyone. Not Bradley, not Helen, not Mrs. Rodriguez next door, who always asked how I was doing and probably reported back to Helen about how thin I was getting, how quiet. The packing happened slowly, quietly, a few boxes at a time, nothing obvious. My clothes, what little I'd brought with me to Bradley's, some books, the blue mug with the chip, photos of Robert and the kids when they were young, a small box of jewelry Robert had given me over the years, my nursing school diploma, still in its frame. The important stuff fit in my car just fine. Turns out a life doesn't take up much space when you cut out all the noise. When you stop trying to make yourself fit into spaces that were never meant to hold you. I packed late at night, after everyone was asleep, carried boxes to my car in the dark, loading the trunk and back seat until there was barely room for anything else. Friday morning, rent day, I woke up at 5 like always. But this time I didn't make coffee at Bradley's house. I made it at mine, because I'd already moved everything the night before. Already cleaned out my room, stripped the bed, left the key on the dresser. I'd left one thing on the kitchen table at Bradley's, an envelope with my name on it. Inside, a check for $1,200, and a note. Bradley, this is the last one. Thank you for the hospitality. I'm moving out today. You can reach me if you need to. Love, Mom. I didn't write anything else. Didn't explain. Didn't justify. Didn't apologize. Just stated the fact and left it at that. I sat in my new kitchen, and made coffee. 1 cup. Took my time with it. Added the cream and sugar slowly, stirred it gently, brought it to my lips and actually tasted it. It tasted right. For the first time in 8 months, coffee tasted the way it was supposed to taste. The sun was just starting to come up, painting my new walls gold. I sat at my own table and watched the light change and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. The quiet knowledge that I'd made the right choice. That I'd chosen myself. That I'd finally kept the promise I made to Robert. I hadn't let myself disappear. I'd found my way back. The phone calls would start within hours. Bradley, confused and hurt. Bianca, apologetic and panicked. Helen, angry that I hadn't told her. They'd all want explanations, justifications, promises that I'd come back. But for the first time in 8 months, I didn't owe anyone anything. Not explanations, not apologies, not rent, just myself. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The call came at 7:30. I was still sitting in my new kitchen, on my second cup of coffee, when my phone rang. Bradley's name lit up the screen. I let it ring, then ring again. On the third call, I answered. Ma? What the hell? I found your note. What do you mean you're moving out? I took a sip of coffee before responding. Let the silence stretch. Exactly what it says, sweetheart. I moved out. I bought a house. You bought? He stopped, started again. When? How? You didn't say anything. Closed on Tuesday. Moved my things last night. Last night? Ma, you can't just... We need to talk about this. Where are you? I'm at my house. My new house. I heard him talking to someone in the background. Bianca, probably. Muffled voices, urgent tones. Then he was back. We're coming over. What's the address? No. The word came out firmer than I'd intended, but I didn't take it back. What do you mean, no? I mean I'm not ready for visitors yet. I need some time to settle in. Ma, this is crazy. You can't just disappear without... I'm not disappearing, Bradley. I'm 57 years old, not 87. I can take care of myself just fine. But the money, how did you afford a house? Do you need help? Did you take out a mortgage because I paid cash? Silence on the other end. Long enough that I thought maybe we'd been disconnected. Cash? His voice came out strangled. Where did you get that kind of money? Your father and I saved for 40 years, plus his life insurance, plus my pension. I've always had money, sweetheart. I just didn't tell you about it. More muffled conversation in the background. Then Bianca's voice came through, slightly breathless. Margaret, it's Bianca. Can we please come talk to you? The boys are asking where you went. Something in my chest tightened at the mention of Tommy and Jake, but I kept my voice steady. They know where to find me. You all do. But not today. I need some space. Space? Bianca's voice cracked slightly. Margaret, if we did something wrong, if we made you feel unwelcome, that wasn't our intention. We can fix this. Please, just let us come over and talk. I looked around my kitchen, at the morning light streaming through windows I'd chosen, at the coffee cup sitting on a counter that belonged to me, at the quiet, blessed quiet of a house where I made the rules. Nothing's wrong that talking can solve, I said quietly. I just realized I don't want to pay rent to exist anymore. I heard Bianca's sharp intake of breath. The rent. Margaret, if it's about the money, we can adjust. It's not about the money. And it wasn't. Not really. It's about me remembering who I am, And I can't do that while trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for me. But we're family, Bradley said, his voice cracking. He'd taken the phone back from Bianca. You don't have to leave family. Family doesn't charge $1,200 a month, sweetheart. That's not fair. No, I interrupted gently. It's not, but it's true, and I'm not angry. I'm just done. I heard footsteps in the background. Small footsteps. Then Tommy's voice, sleepy and confused. Dad? Where's Grandma? Is she making pancakes? The sound pierced through me like a knife. I used to make pancakes every Friday morning, until Bianca mentioned that the twins needed a more structured breakfast routine, until Friday pancakes became another thing I wasn't allowed to do. Let me talk to them, I said quietly. A pause. Then Tommy's voice came through the phone. Grandma? Hey, sweetheart. Where are you? Are you coming back? I closed my eyes, pictured his face, Bradley's eyes, my mother's smile, all that 8-year-old innocence that believed adults always came back. I moved to a new house, Tommy, but you can come visit me anytime you want. Both of you. But why? Jake's voice now, slightly whiny. Don't you like it here? How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you can love someone and still need to leave? That sometimes staying hurts more than going? I like it very much, I said carefully. But sometimes grown-ups need their own space, their own house. Does that make sense? I guess. Tommy didn't sound convinced. Can we still see you? Of course you can. Every weekend if you want. I've got a backyard perfect for playing, and I'm going to plant a garden. You can help me if you'd like. Okay. A pause. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. Both of you. So much. Bradley took the phone back. His voice was thick when he spoke. Ma, please, just let us come over. Let's talk about this like adults. We are talking, and I've said what I need to say. I'm not angry, Bradley. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I just need to live my own life now, on my own terms. But I have to go, sweetheart. I'll call you in a few days. I hung up before he could respond, set the phone face down on the counter, and sat in my kitchen, in my house, drinking my coffee, while the morning light turned everything gold. The voicemails started within the hour. Bradley. Ma, call me back, please. We need to talk about this. Bianca. Margaret, I'm so sorry if we made you feel unwelcome. That was never our intention. Please call us. Helen. Mom, what the hell? Bradley just called me crying. What's going on? I listened to each one, deleted them, didn't call back. Not out of spite, not out of anger, just because I wasn't ready to explain myself to people who'd spent 8 months treating me like overhead. By the end of the first day, I had 17 missed calls. By the end of the second day, 35. I let them pile up like snow. Eventually, they'd stop. Eventually, they'd understand that I wasn't coming back, that this wasn't a negotiation. On Saturday morning, I woke up in my own bed, took my time getting up, made coffee at my own pace, sat on the back porch swing and watched the neighborhood wake up. A woman jogging past with her dog, a man getting his newspaper from the driveway, a couple walking hand in hand, coffee cups steaming in the cool morning air. Normal life. Quiet life. Mine. Around 10, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman about my age standing on my porch, holding a plate covered in foil. I opened the door. Hi. Her smile was warm and genuine. I'm Elena Rodriguez. I live next door. She gestured to the house on the left. Saw you moving in yesterday and thought I'd bring over some cookies. Welcome to the neighborhood. I took the plate, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of it. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. I'm Margaret. Margaret Gonzalez. Nice to meet you, Margaret. You settling in okay? Yes, actually. Very okay. Elena studied my face with the kind of knowing look that comes from living a lot of life. Running from something or running to something? The question was direct, but not unkind. Both, maybe, I admitted. She nodded like that made perfect sense. I moved here 5 years ago after my husband died. Best decision I ever made. Sometimes you need a fresh start. Somewhere that's just yours, you know? I do know, I said quietly. I really do. Well, if you need anything at all, I'm right next door. I'm 82 years old, live alone, and I'm always up for company. She winked. Gets lonely sometimes, having coffee by yourself every morning. Something warm bloomed in my chest. I'd like that. Coffee sounds nice. Tomorrow then, 7 o'clock. I'll bring the pastries. After she left, I sat on my couch and cried. Not sad tears. Relief tears. The kind that come when you realize you've been holding your breath for so long you'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe normally. Someone had welcomed me. No conditions, no rent, no rules about when I could eat or which yogurt was mine. Just simple human kindness. That first week passed in a haze of small pleasures I'd forgotten existed. Waking up when my body wanted to wake up, not when I needed to avoid other people. Making breakfast in my kitchen, using my dishes, eating at my table without checking if I was in anyone's way. Taking long showers without worrying about water bills. Watching TV in my living room at whatever volume I wanted. Going to bed when I was tired, not when I needed to disappear into my room to give the real family their space. Simple things. Basic things. Things I should have been able to do at Bradley's but couldn't because I was too busy trying to be small enough, quiet enough, unobtrusive enough to justify my existence. On Wednesday, I bought seeds. Basil, rosemary, thyme, oregano. The same herbs Robert had planted in 1992. I spent the afternoon preparing the soil in my small backyard, getting my hands dirty, feeling the earth under my fingernails, the smell of fresh soil and possibility. When I finally came inside, my fingers smelled like dirt and herbs and life. I stood at my kitchen sink washing my hands and thought about Robert, about him pulling me close and breathing in. You smell like an Italian restaurant. I love it. I'm doing it, Robert, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I'm keeping my promise. I didn't let myself disappear. The house didn't answer back, but it didn't need to. Saturday morning, 1 week after I'd left, Bradley showed up. I watched him from my front window. He sat in his truck in my driveway for a full 10 minutes before getting out. Walked to my door like he was approaching something fragile, something that might break. I opened the door before he could knock. Hey, Ma. Bradley. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. He looked tired, older than his 30 years, like he'd aged a decade in a week. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I stepped aside, let him in. He walked through my living room slowly, taking it in. The simple furniture, the morning light through the bay window, the quiet. It's nice, he said finally. Really nice. Thank you. The twins miss you. His voice cracked slightly. They keep asking when you're coming back. I'm not coming back, Bradley. I know. He sat down on my couch, heavily, like all the air had gone out of him. I know. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I sat in the chair across from him. I know you didn't. Was it really that bad, living with us? I thought about how to answer that, how to be honest without being cruel. It wasn't bad, I said carefully. It just wasn't mine. I was living in your house, by your rules, on your terms. Paying for the privilege of existing in the margins of your life. We didn't mean, I know you didn't, I interrupted gently. I don't think you meant any of it. The rent increases, the labeled food, the family time that didn't include me, the way you talked about me on the phone like I was a burden instead of your mother. He flinched. You heard that? Every word. Ma, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, I was just venting. You didn't think I'd hear, but I did. And even if I hadn't heard that specific conversation, I felt it every day. In the way Bianca redirected the twins when they wanted to spend time with me. In the way you collected rent like I was any other tenant. In the way I started living in my room to avoid being in anyone's way. Bradley put his head in his hands. I fucked up. We fucked up. Please just come back. We'll do better. No more rent. No more rules. Just, please. I looked at my son, at this man I'd raised, this person I loved more than almost anything in the world, and I realized I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need his permission. I didn't need anything from him except for him to let me go. I miss you, he said, and he was crying now. The kids miss you. Even Bianca misses you. Please, Ma. Then come visit me, I said softly. Bring the twins. Every weekend if you want, but I'm not coming back to live with you. Not now. Maybe not ever. But you're all alone, I smiled, actually smiled. Bradley, sweetheart, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. I was lonely in your house, surrounded by family. Here, I'm just alone, and that's perfectly fine. I don't understand. I know, and that's okay. You don't have to understand. You just have to respect it." He sat there for a long time, silent tears running down his face. Then he stood up. "Can the twins still visit?" "Of course. They're always welcome. You all are. But as guests, not as landlords." He nodded slowly, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "I love you, Ma. I love you too, sweetheart. I always will. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about?" I thought about Robert, about the promise, about coffee that tasted right, about herbs that smelled like life, about quiet that felt like peace instead of loneliness. "It's about me liking who I am here," I said simply. "I'm not in anybody's way, not causing problems, not paying rent to exist. I'm just a woman in her own house, living her own life. And that's enough." After he left, I sat on my porch swing and cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just tears. The kind that come when something ends and something else begins and you're standing in the middle of both, feeling everything at once. The twins came the following weekend. Bradley dropped them off Saturday morning, waited in the driveway while they ran up to my door. Didn't come in, just waved from the truck and drove away. Tommy and Jake exploded into my house like small tornadoes, all energy and questions and excitement. "Grandma, you have a swing. Grandma, can we help you plant seeds? Grandma, Dad said you have cookies." I did have cookies. Elena had brought some over Friday night, and we'd sat on my porch drinking tea and talking about everything and nothing. She'd lost her husband 6 years ago. Understood what it was like to rebuild a life alone, to find peace in quiet mornings and small routines. "We're the lucky ones," he said. "We get to decide who we are now, not who we were with someone else, just us." The twins spent the day helping me in the garden, digging holes for seeds, getting dirt everywhere, asking 1,000 questions about how plants grow and why soil smells like that and whether worms have feelings. I answered every question, took my time with them, didn't watch the clock, didn't worry about anyone redirecting them or telling them I was tired. For the first time in 8 months, I got to be their grandmother. Not a boarder who happened to be related to them, their actual grandmother. When Bradley picked them up that evening, both boys were filthy and happy and talking a mile a minute about what we'd planted. "Can we come back next week?" Jake asked, hanging out the truck window. "Every weekend," I promised, "for as long as you want." After they left, I sat on my porch swing and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink and gold. This was what peace felt like. Helen came by the following week, showed up unannounced on a Wednesday evening, after work, still in her principal clothes. "Can I come in?" she asked, and her voice was different than I'd expected. Soft, almost nervous. "Of course, sweetie." We sat in my living room. She looked around the same way Bradley had, taking in the simple furniture, the morning light, the quiet. "It's really nice, Mom." "Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't check on you more, when you were living with Bradley. I should have seen—" She stopped, started again. "Helen called me, told me what happened, what he said on the phone, what they charged you." "It's okay, Helen." "It's not okay." Her voice got fierce. "You're my mother. You raised us. You sacrificed everything for us. And we let you pay rent to exist? We let you feel like you didn't belong? You didn't let me do anything, sweetie. I made my own choices." "But we should have—" "Should have what?" I asked gently. "Read my mind? Known I was unhappy when I never said anything? You can't fix problems you don't know exist." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Are you happy now?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I'm at peace," I said finally. "Which is better than happy. Happy comes and goes. But peace? That stays." Helen smiled, tears in her eyes. "Dad would be proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so. You kept your promise. You didn't let yourself disappear." After she left, I made dinner. Just for me. Ate it at my table, looking out at my backyard where tiny green shoots were starting to emerge from the soil. Basil, rosemary, thyme. The same herbs Robert had planted 30 years ago. The same herbs that would smell like life when I cut them. These days, I wake up when my body wants to wake up. Make coffee at my own pace. 1 cup, in the blue mug with the chip. Robert wanted to throw it out 100 times. "It's not safe, Maggie," The crack could harbor bacteria. But I kept it. Because some imperfections make things more yours, not less. I sit on my porch swing and watch the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Chen walking her dog. Mr. Peterson getting his newspaper. The young couple 3 houses down leaving for work, coffee mugs in hand. Normal life. Quiet life. Mine. Elena comes over most mornings. We drink coffee and talk about our gardens, our children, our lives. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Just sit in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing someone understands without needing to explain. "You seem lighter," she said one morning, "than when you first moved in." "I feel lighter." "It's the lack of rules," she said wisely. "When you stop living by someone else's expectations, you remember how to breathe." The twins visit every weekend. Sometimes Helen comes too, and we cook together in my kitchen, make too much food, laugh too loud, stay up too late. My house is small, but it's full of life, full of love, full of me. Bradley visits less often. It's awkward still between us. That conversation we need to have but keep avoiding. About the rent, about the labels, about the phone call I overheard. Maybe we'll have it someday. Maybe we won't. But I've realized I don't need his understanding to justify my choices. I don't need his approval to live my life. I just need him to respect my boundaries. And slowly, he's learning to do that. Some evenings I sit in my garden. The herbs are growing now, tall and green and fragrant. When I cut them for cooking, the smell clings to my fingers for hours. I think about Robert, wonder what he'd say if he could see me now. I think he'd smile. That soft smile he used to get when he watched me in the garden. The one that said he knew exactly what I was doing out there, even when I didn't. I think he'd sit on the porch swing and make it creak deliberately, just to make me laugh. I think he'd pull me close and breathe in the smell of herbs on my hands and say, "You smell like an Italian restaurant. I love it." I think he'd be proud, not of the house, not of the money I spent or the stand I took or the family drama I caused by leaving. Proud that I kept my promise, that I didn't let myself disappear, that I found my way back to the woman he married. The one who worked 28 years of night shifts and raised 2 children and maintained a garden and a marriage and a sense of self. She was in there all along, under the labeled yogurt and the 5:30 dinners and the $1,200 rent checks, under the apologies and the shrinking and the desperate need to not be a burden. She was always there. I just had to remember how to find her. I don't know exactly when I came back to myself. It wasn't a single moment. Not a dramatic revelation or a turning point I can mark on a calendar. It was gradual. A series of small returns, small reclamations. The first morning I made coffee without apologizing for existing. The first time I ate dinner at my own table without watching the clock. The first night I slept in my own bed without wondering if I was taking up too much space. The first week I lived without rules I didn't make or boundaries I didn't choose. The first month I existed without paying rent for the privilege. One morning I woke up and the coffee tasted right again. Not different, not better, just right. The way it used to taste on Maple Street, sitting across from Robert in companionable silence. The way it's supposed to taste when you're home. And I knew I was home. Not because of the house, though I love this house. Not because of the garden, though I love this garden. Not because of the quiet, though I love this quiet. But because of me. Because I'd finally given myself permission to take up space, to exist without apologizing, to live on my own terms instead of trying to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold me. I'd come back to myself, and that made everywhere I went feel like home. This is a story about a woman who paid $1,200 a month to learn what she was worth, and discovered she was priceless. Not because of what she gave others, not because of how useful she could be, not because of how small she could make herself, but because she existed, because she was Margaret Gonzalez, 57 years old, retired nurse, widow, mother, grandmother, a woman who lost herself and found her way back, a woman who learned the difference between being alone and being lonely, a woman who kept a promise to a man she loved, a woman who finally came home.
They say you can't put a price on family, but for 8 months, I did. My name is Margaret Gonzalez, and every 30 days, I handed my own son a check for $1,200. Not for a mortgage, not for an investment, but for the privilege of being a ghost in his home. Have you ever sat at a crowded dinner table and realized you were the only one not invited to the conversation? I paid to be invisible. I paid to disappear. But today, I'm going to tell you the moment I decided to stop shrinking and how I finally found my way home. Thanks for staying until the end. If you felt this story, please like and subscribe and share your location in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled.